Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the That Lux Life podcast, where we talk about everything about living your Lux life, home, beauty, fashion, travel, motherhood, everything in between. And we are back here in season 2, and I'm just going to call it season 2 at this point because it's been such a long hiatus, and we are probably about 3 episodes into this season, and I'm talking about everything that's happened over my hiatus, like where I was. And if you missed that first episode, make sure you go back where I share everything that I went through. And I'm going to be sharing the different things I learned through everything we went through, just kind of following it through. But on today's episode, I want to talk about a motherhood topic, something that many families go through, whether big or small, no matter what. And I don't say many, I don't say all maybe, who knows? I want to say all because everyone moves, but maybe not all. So we're going to say many people. But many people who have kids tend to move. They move to a different house, they move to a different state, which involves moving to a different house. They move just somewhere. And we went through the same thing. But we had multiple moves. So we moved from our townhome that my son was born, we lived there, to then living with my parents, which I share in a previous episode about that whole situation. And then we moved into what is now our dream home, our forever home, the home that we're living in now that we built from scratch. And with all of that, my son, we moved when he was 3, he turned 4, and then we moved again when we were 4. So he went through this toddler stage where we were moving him in houses. We were keeping some of his things away from him. And when I say away from him, because we had to put some things in storage, and it was just a lot of change. So in this episode, I want to talk about our experience and give tips on getting your child, whether they are 3 or 4, or maybe even older, ready for any type of move, whether it's moving states or, just moving down the street or just any type of move. It's a change, and children deal with change a little differently than adults deal with change. I mean, even I would say children who are 18 years old, they're just dealing with change. They graduate, they could end up going to college, they end up starting, that's a change. They deal with it differently. So I want to get into specifically our experience and things I've learned. So like I just went through, my son was 3 or 4. He was in daycare, but we didn't move him there. So I want to say that we kept him in the same school to prevent too much change. But we did move him in households where there was a lot going on. So the first thing that we did in order to make sure that he was ready for both the moves is we talked about it. By the time that we figured out that we were moving out of our townhome into our parents' home and then my parents' home, and then knowing that we're going to move into another home, I started having the conversations with my son. I know we were watching, movies, and anytime someone was moving, we would talk about that. There's an episode on Bluey called The Sign that's about moving. And for those who haven't seen it, it's a very touching episode, and they don't, sorry to spoil it for you, they don't end up moving, but you can see that the preparation of them moving, of what the parents, Chili and Bandit, did, and then how Bluey and her sister Bingo, how they were dealing with it, there's a lot of emotions going on, because it's their home. So I would even say we use episodes such as that, like cartoons. That episode didn't exist at the time, but we use some of the things that he's used to, cartoon episodes as well as books. I went and got some books to have those conversations ahead of time so that he could mentally prepare. Though some people think, children, they just kind of go with the flow. They may not be able to vocalize that they're uncomfortable or something's happening, but they're not just going to always 100% go with the flow. So have those conversations. Even if you feel like it's an adult conversation that's happening, they're still internalizing it and they're understanding. And sometimes you have to break it down in a different way. Like I said, make those relations to whether it is like a book or a story or a TV show. And we did that. And I started talking, and I won't say my husband and I started talking to my son about it for both elements probably about a month or 2 before we decided that we were going to sell our home at the time. Like, we knew we were going to sell it, but we didn't know when. So though we thought we had a longer time to kind of get him ready for it, it ended up being shorter. But I think a month or 2 is still a good amount of time. Even if you're just a month ahead of time, like the house is being sold or you're moving, get them prepared. prepared. We were already talking to my son about moving into the new home that we're in now, but we started integrating the conversation of moving in with what he calls his Gigi and Poppy, my parents, his grandparents. And it allowed him to then understand, because he'd even get to my parents' house when we were just visiting before we moved, going, hey, Gigi and Poppy, I'm coming to live with you for a little bit, and then we're going to get our own home. Like, he was understanding. So all in all, from understanding that, it gives them a sense of control. Children like structure. I don't care what anyone says. I'm a firm believer that structure works for kids. They understand what's going on. They feel a sense of control. They function better. They can handle emotions better. They're able to move those transitions at that time. So having those conversations helped. The second thing we did is made sure there wasn't too much change happening at once. We went through a lot in the year where I wasn't recording this podcast. We moved twice, like I said, from our townhome to my parents to this house. We built a home. We got rid of a lot of things. We got new cars. I had a job change. I didn't move a company, but I worked for another company. I didn't leave that company or get fired, but I moved positions. So the way things were organized changed because I now have to travel for certain aspects. And then now we have my youngest son, so we had a baby. Now we knew that we were planning to have another child, but we knew we weren't going to do that during that time. Additionally, we knew from moving, we were moving districts. And the one thing I made sure to do was, yes, from our townhome to the daycare that he was at, it was about a 5-6 minute drive down the road back and forth. Moving to my parents, it was now 25 minutes one way. And then I knew from where we were building this house, it was going to be 25 minutes as well. I could have gone, you know what? I don't want to drive that far. Let me move him to daycares that are closer, because there were plenty of daycares closer. But I said, you know what? He's already going to be doing with moves. He was 3 or 4, so he had about, 2 years of daycare left. We were in the middle of the year when we moved in with my parents. So he was already keeping calm in the one classroom. And then while we were at my parents, he moved classroom. So he had to adjust to a new classroom. I didn't want to get to our new home and go, he just got used to this classroom. I'm going to move him again, especially when he's going to be starting kindergarten the next year, where he's going to be moving schools. And the kids that he had gone through these years of daycare with were going to be kids he wasn't going to see, because that daycare was in a different district. They were going to continue in that district, and he was going to be the new one. So that would have been a lot of change school-wise for him. So I said, I can drive an extra 20 minutes I'm normally not used to. That's neither here nor there. Now, I understand that some situations are not as similar to us, where if you're moving a state, you can't go, well, I can't keep him in the old school, because that's not possible. What I'm trying to share is, if there is anything that you can keep consistent, that is not something that you have to change, try not to change it. Try not to introduce a new child if, you're family planning. Maybe save that for later. I guess that's, kind of hard to say when to have a child, but, we moved our timeline for having our second child to a little bit later, which ended up then being sooner, but it's a different conversation for a different day. If you go back and listen to that previous episode, I did share how our second son came earlier in our plan than we thought. But anywho, try to not introduce so much change at once. Even if you're having those conversations, try to keep as much consistent with a move that you can, so that they're able to not feel like everything's going, I don't want to say bad, but everything's everywhere else at the same time. Another thing that we did was give them an outlet, or give them some fun things they like to do. Because we are a traveling family, the one thing my son likes to do is travel. Every day he gets up and asks, where are we going today? Even during the week, he knows he has to go to school, but when he gets out of school, where are we going? What are we going to go do? Even if it's just traveling over to, my grandmother's, his great grandmother's house. But a lot of times when we say, oh, we're going to go on a trip, we're getting on the airplane, lights up. So during that change, we were fortunate enough to be able to afford taking him on trips. So getting him to do fun things that he enjoys. So what my tip is there is, if you're going through a big move, try to integrate into that timeline of doing some fun things, or, giving them some fun things. If your child's really into Video games, maybe get them a new video game. If your child's really into sports, maybe get them some new sports equipment that they can have an outlet to. By allowing them to have something that they're able to focus their energy on will help them, because if they have bad, I guess, emotions going on, or say, out of control emotions, it gives them a place where they can cope. It gives them an outlet. It gives them something to do. So that was the third thing that we did when we were preparing. So again, to recap, we talked to him ahead of time. We made sure there wasn't a lot of change, and we made sure that he had an outlet. We even got him some new toys and some new books. He's a very avid reader. So we got him some books that he could just kind of focus a lot of that attention and energy on. Another thing we did, and this is probably like the last thing that we did that was really big for us, is we made sure that any questions that he had were answered. A lot of times kids ask intrusive questions, and we as parents don't often feel that we should answer them. I remember growing up is stay in a child's place. There are even certain situations now where my son, he asks questions, and I'm like, I'm not comfortable answering for a child. But when we are moving, if he's asking questions such as, why are we moving? Where are we moving? What's going to happen when we get there? And even if you don't have the answer, try to give them some reassurance. Try to answer as many questions as you can to allow them, again, to give that sense of control. That really, really helped with us. And then lastly, make it exciting. So I did say this was probably going to be the last tip, but this is the last tip. Make the experience fun and exciting. Even if you're stressed out, don't let your child see that stress. Don't put that stress on them. Don't, let them see you and your partner in a disagreement about what's going on with the move. Even if you're not agreeing with the move, maybe your partner got a new job and you have to move with them and you're not in agreement, but it has to be done. Don't let them see any of that. Make it fun no matter what. Make it exciting. As soon as we got to my parents' house yes, we unload everything. We're going to be at Gigi and Poppy's for a while. We're going to have a great time. We're going to have some fun times with Gigi and Poppy. And then even when we're ready to move to our new home, you're going to have your own room. You're going to have your own play area. You're going to have a bigger TV. You're going to get all these things. We made sure that everything was fun and exciting. Give him something to look for. Give their child something to look for. Act like it's Christmas. Talk about all the possibilities. We even go, we're going to have a bigger front yard, so we're going to get you a swing set at some point. You're going to be able to play soccer outside. You can now ride your bike down the road. You couldn't do that there. We're going to get you a new bike. Even if you can't get them new things, just say of all, like the things that you're moving from one house to the other, just even talk about how it's going to be in a new area. You're going to have fresh carpet. It's going to be new. You're going to make new friends. That is what you can do when you're getting your child ready for a big move. And some of these still apply to any change that's happening. And I'll be talking about that as well in one of the upcoming episodes. Like I said, we moved to a new district. My son was on his way to 5. He started kindergarten. So I'll be sharing how some of these things I'm bringing from the move I brought over to getting him ready for kindergarten. But overall, make it a pleasant experience, because if you don't, it could be detrimental to them in the long run, and you don't want that to happen. It could be a traumatic experience they look back on, and you don't want that to happen. So those are my tips of getting your child ready for a big move, a move such as that. And that's just the experience I went through. You may have other things that work better with your child. Always kind of know your child, know what they like, know what works for them, and keep those things going. Make everything positive. Now, if you are listening to this podcast episode on YouTube and you're watching it, make sure that you also check out previous episodes and connect with the That Looks Left podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anywhere where podcasts are available. And if you're listening to this, make sure you go check out my YouTube channel where you can watch the episode as well, along with my other videos. It's at Living Lesh. Of course, you could also find the podcast clips and some little information on the Life podcast Instagram, as well as my personal Living Lush Instagram. Thank you again for listening to another episode of That Lux Life podcast, and I can't wait for you to listen to more. If you haven't listened to past episodes, go back and check those out and keep connected with new exciting episodes that are coming that are going to share how to live your Lux Life.